provide you with some more information. A lot of the slides you've already seen before, but we want to continue to hit the home major points of our budget this upcoming year. As we know, that our preliminary budget had a deficit of $2.64 million. That will change. We're still adjusting some numbers. There's 6 months prior to the budget needing to be adopted, but it's pretty close. Second, we are going to have in the month of March a budget-only meeting for where we can discuss details of our budget, and then we will need some decisions made by the end of the month. So we'll get started. I think that fundamentally we have to understand the business of education in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, the state provides many mandates for which we have to adhere to. PIMS and child accounting reporting, booster club reporting, title reporting, state assessments, educator effectiveness, maintenance of effort related to special education caseloads, your teacher to child counts, for areas including speech pathologists, gifted, nurses, and we are required to provide English as a second language curriculum. The mandates don't stop just at the state level. We also have many federal mandates that we have to adhere to, and many are new. The uniform guidance is still providing mandates for which we have to adhere to, purchasing requirements. I believe that's set to come in effect 2 years from now. We also have to support, not supplant. What that means is we have a baseline. If we have so much for a title school, for example, a title school has a baseline. If it is a title school, we can only provide more with the title money. It's providing a baseline on top of the title money that we receive. So the Education Funding Commission report, I did send this to the board to review. One of the pages in there, page 24, specifically speaks on the state average for educational salaries and benefits is 78% of the total budget. I thought that was a valid point to make. Second, we are a service-oriented industry. The money is invested in people who provide the service and not products. So we would expect our salary and bennies to be a majority of our budget. Third, the funding factors. This is based on a funding commission report to provide a fair and equitable funding formula that has not been adopted yet. However, the current formula still stands with these points here, where it's based on the local capacity to generate revenue, household income, sparsity, student count, ESL, poverty, charter school enrollment. The key thing here is your local capacity to generate revenue. There is high consideration put on this. It's weighted heavily. So let's
Go back, I want to add to that. Just a couple things about this slide. Aaron talked about understanding the business of education in PA. And as the board knows, we've missed connections with Jay Himes, who is the executive director of the Pennsylvania Association of School Board Officials. Jay will be here on the special budget meeting that we're going to have. And I was going to announce it at the end of the meeting, but I'll announce it now. We're going to have it on Monday, March 21st. And I would encourage everybody in the audience to come and listen, because we're going to try to give a synopsis, a little bit of a synopsis here, about how school funding works and why it is that we're in a situation that's unique to us in Mill Creek, in that the state considers us to be a wealthy district. And there's a formula for figuring that out, and Aaron put some of the factors there on that bottom bullet down there. But what they look at are basically two things: the market value of the homes in the district, and they look at the personal incomes of the residents of the district. And with these other factors, they come up with a formula, and they say, Mill Creek, you're a wealthy district. As a result of that, you have the ability to raise revenue through property taxes to get your revenue. So our state funding and our federal funding is small because of those factors. That comes from the state. You have no control over that. We have no control over that. That's the system we live within. I think I said that to Erica today on the phone. So that's one point I wanted to emphasize about this, is that there's a formula in place. The state calculates it. It basically boils down to the market value of the homes and the personal income of the families living there. And the state says, you can raise taxes to generate revenue. That's what you need to do to generate your revenue.
And again, I think another topic of state funding is Pennsylvania is one of the worst states in the country that provides basic or funding for public education. That is an issue that we have, and I think that's worth noting as well. So we recognize this slide. This slide I've used multiple times already in multiple presentations. As Mr. Hall alluded to, 67% of our total budget is locally driven. Let's take a look at where we compare and benchmark ourselves. Again, the gray line is the IU average, all the school districts in the IU. The black line represents our cohorts, which are districts most common to us and related to unemployment rate, per household incomes, etc. And the green line represents the state average. Our local average, or our total revenue per student is well below the IU average, our cohort average, as well as the state average.
Why is that?
And again, it's related to taxes, which is I'm about to describe here too. But keep in mind, the state funding formula, it's all tying together. The state doesn't want to provide much funding to Mill Creek, therefore we have to rely heavily on our local resources. So let's take a look at our equalized mills. What this is let's assume all homes are valued the same. Where does our tax rate stack up compared to everybody else? I'm using the same method here. The gray line is the IU average, the green line is the state average, and the black line is our cohorts. Our tax rate is at the bottom. As we rely heavily on our local resources, 67%, we can't generate as much revenue per student because we haven't been raising taxes when we should have.
Our cohorts, that black line at the top, are other school districts that have the same basic demographic, not demographic, but their communities are the same, with the market values, the personal income, and some of those other things that Aaron pointed out in the first slide. So when you look at the comparison, we're at the bottom.
Bill, excuse me, and those are downstate, some of those districts that you're comparing to, right?
Correct.
I mean,
We have the list,
just not Erie County.
they're not Erie County.
No, I mean, you have a couple right around Pittsburgh, you have Gateway.
The Erie County ones would be in the gray, the IU.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the consortium, that's the local IU, the local districts.
So what's the impact of not raising taxes? Again, you've seen this slide before. This is a BDO slide. As you can see here, the Mill Creek didn't raise taxes in 2009, 2010. Multiple districts did. What was the outcome of that? Lost out on $1.8 million in revenue.
Can you see that okay? Can you see the numbers okay?
Thank you.
In the 10-11 school year, the district did raise taxes. It generated an additional $1.1 million. In the 11-12 school year, the district did not raise taxes, as other districts did. Lost out on about $1.2 million. So over a 3-year span, that's, I believe this is $1.8 million, roughly. But it's not just $1.8 million. Every year you don't raise taxes, it's compounded. So let's take a look down here at the bottom. Year number 1, $1.7 million, ties to the top. Year number 2, $740,000, the district was out in revenue. Year number 3, $2 million, for a total of $4.5 million over a 3-year span the district lost out in revenue for not raising taxes. We were asked already, what's the impact of the last 3 years because of raising taxes? Well, let's take a look. This is the same concept. You had 1.5 in 13-14, 2.4 million was raised in 14-15, 15-16, 1.8 million. The compound effect of that is 5.7 million. We know that we have a deficit right now of 2.64 million. If we didn't raise taxes these 3 years, we'd be out right now, sitting today trying to balance a budget of $8.4 million in the hole.
Which sounds like 3 years ago, which was $8.8 million.
So let's take a look at our expenditures. As I mentioned before, a state report provided, trying to provide fair and equity funding formula says that 78% is the average for salaries and bennies statewide. As we look here, 44% is in salary. You have your FICA, your PSERS, your medical, other benefits. We're sitting at 74%. All right, so now we have our debt. We have our transportation costs. We have 15% for which we can control. However, that 15%, we really can't control that entire 15%. We have utilities, we have our broadband to go on, our legal and auditing fees, we have tuition to charter cyber schools, alternative education. That 15% dwindles down pretty quick. So what's that mean in our total expenditures per student? We know that we don't raise enough revenue per student as compared to our cohorts, the IU average or the state average. That means we can't spend as much.